All right, we understand that we're the only thing standing between you and lunch, so we'll try to create the tastiest appetizer we can in the form of our discussion today. I want to take just a couple minutes and kind of tee up the topic that we're going to talk about, which is the evolving partnering going on in medical devices, because we see a lot of things changing from the way that we've thought about business development, partnering, and acquisitions in the past. We published a report about 2.5 years ago called Healthcare Unwired, and there we looked at the evolving nature of telecommunications and connectivity as it's transforming healthcare, and looking at mobile health and how that's changing the device area as well as the medical and pharmaceutical areas. We then, about 1.5 years ago, published a report called the Medical Technology Innovation Scorecard, where we identified how innovation is changing across 9 different countries around the world and who's actually gaining and losing in that competitive environment. As we took those 2 reports and put them together, what we found is that there's new business models emerging in medical technology and the pharmaceutical industry that we call owning the disease. Owning the disease is an approach where companies now are trying to figure out how they can actually provide total solutions to address the needs that are emerging. So if you look at Mayo's recent statement at this conference, where they see the world going from 100% fee-for-service to 70% capitation in the next 5 years, Mayo is going to have to now assume significantly greater risk and have new risk management strategies to take on that level of capitation. What we see that doing then is creating a ripple effect throughout the medical device and the pharmaceutical industries for those companies to step up and manage and take that risk. And the business model to do that is what we call owning the disease, where these companies will provide total solutions to enable the healthcare providers as well as the patients to better manage the risks that are assumed. So let me just give you one example, and then we will have our discussion as the panel. In the UK, there's a pharmaceutical company, Merck, who was losing market share. They were struggling in that market, and they decided that they would either have to exit the market in the growth hormone drug area that they were in, it was a generic drug, or they would actually have to come up with a better way to get more effective results. And so what they decided is that if they invented a small medical device that would automatically inject the drug into the patient and then communicate that information to nurses in a call center that could then intervene and help patients manage their disease better, that they could actually get better outcomes. So they put this device in the patient's home. They had nurses train the patients on how to use that. They had nurses in the call center monitoring it. And as a result of that, they were actually getting substantially better results than they'd ever gotten before. So they went to NHS and said, if we can deliver better results to you, will you pay us a premium for improved performance? And then NHS said, we'll pay you a premium if you improve performance, but we'll charge you a penalty if you have patients that actually don't do as well. And so what they decided to do is mitigate that risk by putting a molecular diagnostic involved in the process, so that every patient, before they would actually get their medical device, would actually go through a process of being tested with a molecular diagnostic to determine whether or not their drug would work on that patient. So they then transformed the process for how they manage the disease to having a molecular diagnostic to screen in or out patients that would perform well on their drug, providing a medical device to a patient in their home to automatically inject the drug, have nurses in the call center who could manage that and intervene when necessary, and also could even remotely from the call center change the depth of the needle to increased efficacy. They then would provide nurses to the doctor's office in order to help the doctors better manage the patient, integrate all the information into the electronic health record for the provider, and then go to NHS and get paid one payment, not for everything. Everything is actually bundled into one payment based upon outcomes and performance. So this is the concept of owning the disease. And in so doing, the doctor still does what the doctor does, but now Merck has provided devices and support services for the provider to get better quality outcomes. As we then looked at the industry, what we saw is a pattern starting to emerge where we see lots of companies moving in the direction, like I just described with Merck, to own the disease. And 2 of those companies we have on the panel today, Medtronic as well as Endo Pharmaceuticals, that we see moving in this direction. And what this is required is for them to realize that they can't do everything. They've got to have different partners, and they've got to do different sort of acquisitions that are non-traditional in nature in order to collect all the capabilities necessary for them to own the disease, to deliver a total value proposition in order to help the providers and the patients better manage and mitigate risk. So with that, what we'll do is we'll have a discussion on some of these topics, And then, obviously, as before, if you have any questions, you can holler at us and we'll address those. All right. So let me start with you, Julie, if I could. You've done some very non-traditional things. You've gotten into the IT area, you've acquired AMS, you've gone clearly beyond what a pharmaceutical company would traditionally have thought would be the directions they would go. Tell us kind of why you've done that, how you've done that.
Sure. Well, let me just start off with a little bit of a history. Endo Pharmaceuticals historically was a pure play specialty branded pharmaceutical company, and like any pure play pharmaceutical company, facing into the same risks that every other company is facing into, and that's the reality of patent cliffs. And in that context, we recognized that with a very healthy balance sheet, we could put our balance sheet to work to diversify our technology base, diversify the platforms in which we competed, and really build a strong market presence in a therapeutic area, specifically urology, where there was no one dominant player. So over the course of the past 4 years, we have done a number of major acquisitions to try to shore up our strategic position in pain. We did a major acquisition of a generics provider that's one of the largest generics providers of pain medications in the US, recognizing that 90% of all pain medications that are written today are filled with a generic. We felt we needed to be in that particular space. But I'll talk more specifically about what we've been doing in urology, because it really gets to the heart of the article that you wrote around owning a disease. And so our first acquisition in the field of urology was a specialty pharmaceutical company called Endevis. And that brought us a few novel specialty types of products in the space of urology to treat prostate cancer, bladder cancer, and testosterone replacement. The next acquisition we did was a company called Tronox. Now this was a very unconventional acquisition for a company like ours. But essentially, Tronox is the largest service provider, mobile service provider of capital equipment in the field of urology, and has a business partnership relationship with 1/3 of all US-based urologists. And so that gave us an opportunity to build our channel presence in a way that was very powerful, because the nature of the relationship that Tronox had with its customers was very much a business partnership. The next acquisition we did in the space was AMS. Just over a year ago, we acquired American Medical Systems, a local company. And American Medical Systems is absolutely a market leader in the field of urology. They have the market-leading position in erectile restoration prosthetics. They have the largest market presence in both male and female urinary incontinence, a very significant market leadership position in BPH laser technology. So when we started thinking about urology and some of the major diseases that urologists are treating, the acquisition of AMS really catapulted us into a major leadership position within the field of urology. Just towards the end of last year, the last acquisition we made, and certainly not the last intended acquisition, but the most recent, was we acquired the 2 leading health information technology companies, the 2 largest providers of electronic medical records in the field of urology. Given the nature of urology, the sort of typical off-the-shelf EMR offering is not something that urologists use. They were primarily using either the EMR offering from Eurosource or Meridian. And we acquired both of those companies at the end of last year. And the reason for acquiring those 2 companies wasn't because we necessarily want to be in the EMR business, but because we believe that with the power of that particular platform, we can begin to aggregate data and begin working in partnership with US urologists to mine their own data, compare that data and benchmark it to other practices across the nation, and really begin to understand how to create best practices in terms of how they're managing their individual practices, but also begin to look for insights around how to improve patient outcomes. So we've really taken a holistic approach of acquiring a very strong presence in the field of urology. Obviously, with the pace of the acquisitions, we're highly focused right now on integration and partnering with some of the largest urology group practices in the country to